Hi, I'm Mark Shepherd, acupuncturist in Donington, Chichester, West Sussex. As you know, I've been interviewing practitioners around the world and also now locally as well. But also, I've been doing a focus on local business, really wanting people to know who's around and who's out there. Today, I have the pleasure in speaking to Paul Beard. Paul Beard is Director of SME Advisor. They are based in Barnham and they're specialists in HR, health and safety, and importantly, business continuity. Hi, Paul, how are you?
Good morning, Mark. Very well, thank you. Hope you're good too.
Oh, I am indeed. So it'd be great if you could start off just telling us a bit about yourselves and SME Advisor, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, you know how you get that situation where you're looking at your HR and health and safety issues, and the business is spending hours and hours researching something just to make sure they get it right. Well, we solve that because we've got 9 very experienced, knowledgeable and innovative people at hand. And this results in our customers being stress-free because we're having to spend less time and getting the desired results at a reasonable price.
And right now, I know that you have been, well, it's such a different time for business and people having to cope with so many different things. And you've been really busy helping clients with that. And what can you tell us about that? Because I know that business continuity is right up there.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we had strategies in place beforehand because business continuity, people think about this as disaster recovery and that sort of thing. But it's basically having a bit of forethought, really, and thinking, well, what could happen? And obviously, there's been a big test on businesses now as to those who can continue to trade. Can they do it in a new way? Can people work from home and so on and so forth? Fortunately, we were able to do that. So mid-March, everybody was sent packing to their homes. So they're taking laptops, extra screens, telephones, and we just carry on that business as usual. We can transfer calls and everything is as flexible as it was when someone was sitting a few feet away from you at a desk. So it's really been business as usual, and that's really been important because certainly in those initial few weeks when people were confused about furlough, and frankly, so was the government because there was different guidance coming out almost by the day. So we have to guide people through furlough and what happens now. And then there was health and safety questions like, well, we've got people working from home. Do we have to do this? Do we have to do that? And of course, now we're starting to hopefully emerge from this. We'll have to wait and see what the impact is of opening the doors again in the coming days and weeks. But people are now asking the questions, well, what responsibilities do I have as an employer for the welfare of my employees and for that matter my customers who might visit, because we tend to be returned to the workplace. So it's got extremely busy, a little bit quiet, and then below me it's starting up again. And sadly, I'm afraid we're also dealing with redundancies now. So it's a difficult situation. Go on.
And with the businesses who are able to have employees working from home, that again comes with requirements, doesn't it? So I would believe that if someone's working from home, there has to be health and safety involved in that as well.
Yeah. So and whether it be the working from home or a lot of people have been taking a sort of alarmist view to the fact that they now have to do, the law has changed and therefore they have to do a risk assessment based on the COVID-19. And I've said to several business groups this week, no, nothing has changed because you've always had to do that. The COVID-19 and the fact that we're hopefully going to coexist with it still in the background means that it's just another hazard in the workplace that you need to risk assess and manage accordingly. So in that respect, nothing has changed. It's just important that you recognise that. You look at how the hazard involved, which is the cross-infection, and how you manage that risk is by doing a risk assessment and putting in place control measures to actually allow you to continue, or not, as the case may be. There'll be certain types of businesses which will still find it very, very difficult to carry on doing what they do. One of my colleagues on the health and safety side, we've been going around, we're working with a managing agent and going around a number of shared occupancy buildings to make sure, because the landlord has a responsibility for the common parts. So how are they going to manage access and egress from the building? What are they going to do about reception areas, toilets, passageways, and so on and so forth? And how are they going to manage that best? What do they need to do? Is it down to cleaning and sanitation? Is it down to signage, so on and so forth? And most of the times we can come up with a solution, and we're working with partners to make sure that things like masks are available, signage is available, like I said, the sanitisers are available. But there is a reality is that there are one or two reports where we had to say that there is nothing you can do. The way the things are set up at the moment with this hazard, it's very, very difficult to see how you can make this particular workplace safe, because it's a new entity as far as we're concerned. So you just try and manage it the best way you can. I've been speaking to a couple of insurance brokers locally this last few days, and they're bracing themselves for a number of claims, because you may have situations relating to people's ongoing employment. They may have claims relating to people's health, and so on and so forth. So it's difficult, but it's really just a case of managing those changes. And communication is always so important. We're talking now. Normally, if we see one another, it's face to face. And yeah, I do think that the landscape will change. Certainly, the high street will change, but the business background, that will change radically as well. And I think everybody is now looking at how they deal with things. My daughter, where she works, during the lockdown up until about a week ago, they worked out they'd saved £2,000 in printing costs, because people working from home were no longer printing and they were just using 2 screens. Well, the screen will cost you, I don't know, maybe £200, something like that. And yet, if you can bring those efficiencies in, you can save costs like printing, and obviously there's the green issues that are related to that, which is great. Then it just makes you, sometimes you need a kick up the backside to look at it and think, well, actually, maybe there are other ways of doing what we do. And I think, we've had this forced upon us now, but sometimes the outcome can be very positive.
There can be some, like you say, some positives that you just wouldn't have been aware of if that hadn't happened. So it's nice to know that they're there too. And we were talking earlier about conversations in groups and meetings, and sometimes you'd think it'd be impersonal to have people on the screen, but it seems to be working very well.
I think I go to a number of networking groups, or two to be precise, and you might arrive and you'll chat to 1 or 2 people, you then talk to the room, and then you're away. I honestly believe that using things like Zoom and Teams and things like that, you potentially have more meaningful conversations with more people, and people listen, than when you're doing it face to face. And it may be that the landscape in terms of networking changes. Maybe that it'll change to constantly being online, and when you do have those sort of one-to-one meetings with people, those one-to-one conversations, yes, you can do it again by the same medium, or maybe that's when you meet with someone somewhere. But social distancing is likely to be here for certainly some considerable time, because even if they find a solution to this, I'm no scientist, but even if they do, it's going to take a while for it to work its way through a system until it becomes a more manageable and less of a threat to the nation.
And it's like you're saying with the networking, I mean, we're members of one networking group together. And in these networking meetings over the last few weeks, we've got different businesses, some with employees, some without employees. And within this, you've been giving such great advice to people and signposting things. You were able to do that at everybody at the same time. It was so easy to convert. That was very helpful for a lot of people. Thinking about the business
Well,
continuity, um, I suspect it's going to be a situation whereby businesses will come back, possibly due to track and trace. Then I'll have to close again, come back and close again. Do you think that's going to be the case as well?
Obviously, having these strategies in place is always best before the event.
Yeah.
And like if you do a business continuity plan, the most important thing is to test it.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they talk about a business continuity plan or a BCP, just immediately think of their IT. And they think of backups and so on and so forth. Yes, everything's back up. But if you think of it in that respect, when was the last time you actually tested the system you got? So in other words, if you were to take all of your machines away and have to buy new ones, could you immediately access all that data?
Yeah.
Where are the passwords? Who's got them? Are they the only person that's got access to them? And are they still with us? You know, all those different considerations.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I remember talking to a professional firm, and they said the issue then was the floods that we had down in the Lewis area, if you recall those. They said, that's okay, we're on the first floor. I thought, oh, great. Well, firstly, how do you get to work? And how does your power and your telecoms get into the buildings? I think that comes in downstairs, you know. They said. So, you know, it has been testing times for people, and there will be positive changes that come from that. And like I say, there are also some myths that are flying around. We highlighted some of these in the newsletter that we sent out to our customers over the Christmas period. We talked about some myths when it comes to health and safety, and one or two of those I'll share with you now. You know, like my business is too small and I don't need a health and safety policy. Well, bear in mind what we were saying about the health risks associated with employees. Not having a health and safety policy, you know, could mean that you are at greater risk as it were. Now, the misconception is that because you've got less than 5 employees, and that can include the business owner, that you don't need to have a health and safety policy. Absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Everybody needs to practice health and safety. Where the myth comes from is that if you've got less than 5 people, you don't have to write it down. But if you consider, if you're sitting across the room now in a PACE interview, in other words, you're being interviewed under caution by maybe a police officer, a fire officer, an HSE officer, in other words, a warranted officer of the law, and they're asking you questions about your policy, and you're relying on the fact that you know your health and safety policy. A health and safety policy might be anything between 30 and 100 pages thick, because it talks about how are you going to manage the process. Because the Health and Safety Work Act doesn't actually tell you how you do anything. That's the management regs, and usually it's down to the business. But in essence, the Health and Safety Work Act says you need to provide a safe place of work for your employees, for your visitors, and so on and so forth. And if you're a landlord and a manufacturer, there's certain things there too. But it just tells you, in essence, what you need to do. It doesn't tell you how you're going to do it. That's what your policy does. That's what they call the policy arrangements. So depending on what you do for an organisation, we've got a simple policy, us. And this is what makes me cry when I see someone who's got a policy, but they've clearly just taken it from someone else, put it into Word and changed the name of the business and the name of the people, hey presto, because it doesn't reflect what they do. Ours is pretty simple. You know, previously we sat in an office, we had a bit of dodgy chemicals underneath the sink for toiletries and the toilets and that sort of thing. There's a bit of manual handling, but the biggest risk to us was when the biggest hazards were associated with when we got in our cars and we drove and saw our customers, because we might be going to another office, we could be going to a manufacturing plant, we could go to a quarry, who knows. And so therefore you look at those different aspects of your business, and therefore that's the policy arrangements. Now, if you really think that you can retain all of that up there, then I'm pretty damn impressed. And not only that, it's got to be the same time every time you recall that, because you might be then in the courtroom and so on and so forth. So if you have got those procedures in place, just write them down. Just write them down. And the same goes for a written risk assessment. You know, just just if you've done it, if you have considered it, write it down, keep a formal record of it. So that's where this misconception, I think, is that people say, because of the COVID-19, we have to do a special risk assessment. This is a new law. Well, it's new insofar as, of course, COVID-19 is the new kid on the block. But of course, the procedure of managing the hazards in the workplace and the risks associated with those, and how you process that and manage it, is as long as health and safety has been around, which in this country is 1974. So it's difficult. It's difficult. And like I say, the landscape's changed. People are going to be working from home. Not everybody works from home well. Some people, we're talking to some of our customers, they find that people are excelling. They've really lended themselves to it, and yet other people are really struggling. But that may be the shape of your job in the future. So therefore, sometimes you need to make those changes, because it may be that we don't have so many big offices. You may just have almost like hot desking type scenarios where you've got a meeting place if you really need to get together. And people may continue to work from home. It's like, we'll have to wait and see on that one.
And I'm moving on from that slightly. I mean, if I was talking to you without this situation, and this might be just as relevant with this situation, and do know you have quite a considerable e-learning platform for your clients. Are you able to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. Well, whether it be the health and safety or whether it be just managing people, of course, the key thing is communication. Talk. Back to the health and safety. A lot of people, when we go out and we do the health and safety for a business, will help them write their risk assessments. And bosses of a business sometimes get a bit upset because we don't want to talk to them. So, well, with the greatest respect, you don't do the job. It's the guy over there. So he's the right person we need to talk to. So we'll talk to the people that do the job, because the bosses don't often know. Especially if you look at furlough, for example, you've got people off. I guarantee you, the boss can't come in and do all the jobs that all the other people did. Otherwise, well, why would you employ them? You employ them because they're good at what they do, and that then releases you to do perhaps more strategic functions within the business. So having communication is so important, and obviously in order to run things efficiently, it's important you train people. A, it makes damn good sense. B, certainly from a health and safety point of view, it's a legal requirement. You do a risk assessment. What do? You don't hide it, do you? You don't say don't tell anybody. You need to tell everybody, look, these are the risks associated with what you're doing, and this is what we've considered, and working with you, these are the control measures. So therefore, we're going to provide you with this, or we're suggesting that the safe way of picking up that box of paper over there is to do it this way or that way, or empty it out and do it bit by bit. And oh, by the way, to fulfill our obligations, we're going to train you how to do that. Typically, if you get a classroom training, you'll probably find that usually the maximum is about 12, maybe 15 people in the room. And if you imagine, we did this with a local employer. They were in a hotel, and the cost was astronomical, because they certainly couldn't shut down the business to do a bit of training. But if Fred leaves and Mary joins, you've got to do it all again. And at £500 or £600 or more sometimes for a half day's training, that's very costly. And not only that, typically the business won't then do it, which means that they're not working in a safe manner, which leaves them open to either prosecution, or for that matter, most importantly, the person might injure themselves or other people. So e-learning is so important, because it's easily accessible. We use a video-based e-learning platform. So there's someone talking to you. You've got the backdrop of the information there, so you're seeing images, you're hearing someone, and it's written down. So it's using all of your senses to make sure that the penny drops, and then it goes through a Q&A session at the end, and you get the accreditation accordingly. And so it's very cost effective, it's very time efficient, and most importantly, it means that people can work safely. A lot of people we talk about, we're relatively unique. I know no one else that does it this way, so I'm letting the world know now that when it comes to things like health and safety, we always talk to a customer's insurance company or their broker, because we want to know what conditions or warranties there are associated with their policy. Because even though the insurance company isn't a warranted officer like a fire officer, HSE, environmental health and the like, they can equally cause us much problems in the business. So what the important thing there is to make sure that if they put down conditions that if you're working at height, you must do this, or you mustn't work at height, or they may say you can do certain things, or you must do certain things. The most common one, I'll walk around a factory or something of that nature, just a workshop, and I'll point to a bin. And I said, well, there's an automatic bridge, because I would put money on the fact that every workshop policy out there will say that your bins must be metal bins with a lid. Metal bins with a metal lid. And you see an open bin is full of oily rags and that sort of thing. And that isn't necessarily going to be the cause of the fire, but if the fire reaches it, it will make it infinitely worse, because it's suddenly this explosive thing, because there's plenty of oxygen around, plenty of fuel, and suddenly what was a minor incident can turn into something quite severe. And of course, if that's a condition within your policy, which I'm pretty sure it will be, then if you go to make a claim, sorry, either that will mitigate whether the amount that they'll pay out, or whether they will pay out at all. So we look upon the insurance company as another legislator, effectively. And like I say, no one else does that. But whenever we talk to an insurance broker about one of their customers, they respect us for it, because they know that we're risk managers like them. We're working hand in hand with them to make sure the customer's safe, and if they need to make a claim on insurance, because why else would you do it, that they're able to do that.
It makes it more like a team, doesn't it? Yeah. It's been so interesting talking to you, and I could listen for far longer, but I know I've got to let you get back to what you need to do. So what'd be really good to hear is, I'm going to put some links, if whatever links you'd like me to, just below in the text that comes with the video. But could you tell us just briefly, how do you get in contact with you, and where your clients generally are?
Like I said, most of our clients, they range from literally, our smallest client has one employee. Our largest client, I believe, has something in the region of about 150, 160 employees. So when we call ourselves SME advisor, we cover that whole spectrum of the SME market, purely and simply because it's not viable for them to employ an HR or health and safety professional full-time in their business, so they outsource it to us. And like I said, we become part of their team. We get involved in their management meetings and so on and so forth. But they pay for the time they use and no more necessarily. So if they want to contact us, the main office number, I'm sure you'll broadcast this later on, it's an 033 number, but don't worry, it's a local rate, so it's 033 0333 4997. Our website is smeadvisors.co.uk, and just pop us an email on info@smeadvisor.co.uk.
And it's mainly London and the southeast, is that right?
It is, however. Well, again, we talked about making adaptations to your business earlier. We had a Zoom call like this with our HR consultants, but one based locally, another one in Horsham, another one based up in Surrey, in the outskirts of London, and another one who's stuck in Australia at the moment. But so we're all over the place in that respect, and so therefore, face-to-face meetings may change. I held before lockdown, I held an investigation for a disciplinary without prejudice meeting, in fact, with a business based up in Ipswich, and we did it by Zoom. We could still read the person concerned, so maybe for our business, London and South East may not be there, certainly from an HR perspective. Health and safety is a bit different because you need to get to the environment. But certainly from an HR point of view, does it really mean there has to be a business around the corner? I don't think so. I don't think so. If I may, I'd just like to mention there's a business coach in Haywards Heath called Marco Suarez. And I was talking to Marco. He's a very successful business coach. And Marco's business model is that he has his first meeting with a customer on Zoom. He might meet them, although very rarely, for a second meeting, but after that he never ever meets with his customers. It's always done in this medium. They can still talk to each other, they can still communicate with the same intensity and same feeling as they would anywhere else. If you were face to face, and yet, as Marco said, he can see his customers, he can offer greater flexibility, he can give them more of his time with greater flexibility without those overhead costs. It's a win-win situation.
And the time travel.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
It's been great talking to you, Paul. Thank you very much for today. And yeah, very good to talk to you. All the best.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye-bye.